Hello, everyone. We're just waiting a few minutes before it's actually 3 o'clock here Pacific time on the West Coast. And I'm looking forward to a great radio program with you today. We'll just wait here a minute or two until it turns 3 o'clock. So just sign on now if you like. My assistant advises me always to sign on a little bit before we before we actually get to the point where we're live and online. Okay, close enough. It's 3 o'clock, and if you can look here, I have a little friend with me, and I want us to just start off by reading so we get a few more people. Hello, Linda. How you doing? Hello, Sal. Nice to meet you again. Been a long time. Let me just do a little promotion, and then I'll introduce my co-host here. Welcome to Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. Now in our 5th year, bringing you conscious awareness and discussion on the mind-body-spirit connection. I am Dr. J, your host, and normally my amazing co-host is Deirdre Layton, but she's on travel looking after her mom. And of course, please do share and follow. Together we bring you grounded metaphysics, where the spiritual rubber hits the road. Real life teachings and applications that are pertinent and relevant to you. Here you can breathe the fresh air of real consciousness education while avoiding the hype and the fascination. We are all about helping you to empower your life through understanding your true spiritual nature. So come aboard our beam of light and enlighten your load as we travel the waves of knowledge for the next hour. And here we are in the last quarter of our moon. So let me introduce my guest here. This is Caesar. Caesar is a blue front Amazon parrot, and he has been with me. This December 20th will be 31 years. He was born in 1987, and this particular species of parrot lives somewhere between 40 and 60 years, I assume. So this is just wonderful. Wonderful that I have a co-host today. Deirdre is looking after her mom on Vancouver Island. Her mom is taken ill. And so we looked for another co-host, Bev Wine, who is a very fine instructor of mine in integrative chakra therapy. And she's otherwise busy. And so depending on how many people actually come online today, we'll see if maybe I can get one of you to come on and co-host with me. It's been an interesting time here. We had our first real storm of the year in San Diego. You know, unlike Calgary, where I go many times a year. In fact, people ask me if I'm Calgarian or Canadian because I'm there so much. But actually, San Diego here is my home, and I travel to Calgary often. I have many students and workshops there. And so we had our first rainstorm yesterday. And San Diego is really not anything like Calgary because we really don't have 4 seasons. We just get warmer and cooler. We really don't get cold. But it's a nice place to be. The high today is 62 degrees, which I guess for Calgary would be sweltering. But it's an interesting contrast to travel back and forth. I do go to Calgary quite often. So, and my little friend here, Caesar, if he wants to chime in, he probably will. He may have something to say to you. Oh, by the way, if you're liking and following and sharing, you can also type in questions to me. I've got the computer right here, and I've got the screen on Facebook up and running. So today's topic, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about self-empowerment, but also about some new programs that we have, and towards the end of our time here, if you'd like to do some free readings for you. So if you follow any of the mass media, you'll see many advertisements for awakening your potential, for life coaches, and tools and techniques to lead a better, fuller life. So what is self-empowerment? That's what we're going to talk about. So please share and follow and make comments so that we can respond. We'll also talk about some of the new programs and here on Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. And please do send in your questions and observations. We love to dialogue with our listeners. And of course, you can either text us your name or question. And our Light News website is www.lightnews.org, lightnews.org. So what is self-empowerment and what does that mean? And why today is it so important? Why do people really embrace different forms of self-improvement? You know, if this was 150 years ago, if this was a time when most of us were either farmers or we fished for a living or we raised sheep or cattle or horses, that would have been pretty much the extent of our lives. We would have been concerned about the health and welfare of our crops, our fishing, our animals, and then in the wintertime, if we were in a place that experienced winter, we'd also be concerned about keeping our equipment healthy. And so life in those days was a little bit different than today's fast-paced life. You know, if you want an apple, you don't even have to really go to the store anymore. You can call Uber or you can call DoorDash, and you know, it's it's really something to be able to live in this area where given to us or sent to us immediately, especially, you know, with the click of a phone. You know, you've got Amazon and you've got Target and you've got all these other places and all these instant conveniences. You know, my wife and I were talking just last night, and we were talking about how things have changed, you know, like how young children today don't realize there was a time before cell phones. There was a time before the internet. There was a time when I was using a computer and all there was on the computer was text, just text, no pictures, nothing of the sort, no graphic user interface. And so, you know, we've come a long way. In fact, if you look at our history, we have come further in the past 60 years than we have in the past 600. You know, it was just, what, 1969 that we had individuals who were on the moon, right? Neil Armstrong and was it Buzz Aldrin? A couple of astronauts on the moon. And now here we are, what, 50 years later? Amazing, amazing. So there's been a movement towards self-improvement. And many individuals have popped up over the years who offer self-improvement in many ways, whether it's physical fitness, whether it's dietary, whether it's spiritual, business and finance, real estate. So there's so many areas now that people are offering their services so that a person who desires to improve themselves in some way now has access to all of these resources of individuals who can, in fact, help them in whatever way that you choose. Hello, Lynn. Nice to see you. And hello, Eric. Eric, do you have an iPhone or do you have one of those pesky Androids? Because if you had an iPhone, I could bring you on live right now. You have quite the dialogue. So self-empowerment, in my terminology, is a way of bringing forth a perfection that you already have. You know, I've spent a lot of time over the years, probably since 1987, I really started studying spirituality and looking into what is the true nature of the human being, because I was fascinated as to how we even exist in this dimension. And really, I fully realize that there's a lot of people who live their lives very nicely without ever such a question ever crossing their mind whatsoever. But to me, it was pretty important. What is the mind-body-spirit relationship? So self-empowerment is a way of developing a muscle that you already have. The thing about spirituality is that we are already in a oneness, if you like, or what some people call the non-dual state, where there's no I or thou, there's no duality. But yet, how do you actually access it? In fact, later on in the program, I'm going to talk about an exciting series of online and retreat offering that I have that'll do just that. And so the idea of empowering the self first has to take a look at who are we anyway? And so in my understanding of the universe, which we all have a certain level of understanding, is that there is no separation, that we live in oneness, and that there is an astral self that is beyond space and time, and there's a physical self that experiences space or time. The astral self is unchanging, the physical self is changing. The astral self immortal, the physical self mortal. And so these are, like I said before, we shot a very short video a couple of days ago about astral travel and mediumship, where we talked about how the spiritual nature and the physical nature of the human being are just really two sides of the same coin. It's one side, one coin rather, but with two sides. And so, hey, Carol, thank you for joining us. We got lots of people coming online now. So we have this dual nature. And again, I'm the first one to say, we put on the brakes so quickly because we talk about there is a you and I that lives in a dimension beyond space and time, and yet we also have a physical nature. And sometimes that rubs against some of the more mainstream religious precepts where certainly the human being isn't seen as that way. Like in the Christian religions, and most of them, you have only one lifetime. That's it. You're up to bat once and you're done. And there are no other lifetimes. Whereas in other religions, like if you are in India, according to Lord Krishna, you can have as many as 8,400,000 lifetimes. So, the soul actually is continuing. So when we talk about developing the self, we're starting, in my opinion, from a premise of purity, where we are already pure. One of my favorite gurus, teachers, I never got to meet him personally because he passed away in 1952. His name was Paramahansa Yogananda. Paramahansa Yogananda. And what I really liked about him, excuse my language, folks, he had a no-shit way of explaining spirituality. He made it very simple, very straightforward, nothing fancy, but yet so much meat on what he was saying that you could really get into it and say, yeah, that really makes perfect sense. And one of the things he said was, one cannot be any closer to God than you already are, but you can reveal that closeness. You can reveal it. So he was very, very big into meditation practices, Kriya Yoga, and that by constant meditation, you would also develop your intuition. Intuition is something everyone has, but it's a lot like our muscles. You can take an average muscle, and if you do a lot of this, in the gym, you can develop that muscle even more. So the idea is we are not separate from what we seek. We are already connected completely to the oneness. And it's an interesting word, using the word connection, because the word connection implies two or more things, right? You're connecting one thing to another. But if you think about it, connection implies separation. You're bringing two things together, but there's still two things. So if I'm in the West and I say I'm connecting to God, then someone says, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense, because in the West, we're very dualistic, and this is how we tend to think. Whereas in the East, if I said I'm merging with God, then in those cultures, that would be much more accepted, because the idea is God is the ineffable, the all, the emptiness, that God is everything that there is. So you couldn't be separate from God if you tried. And I know today that a lot of people have trouble using words like God, spirit, divine. Sometimes we say source field, or we say source, or we say creator or creative aspect of the universe. So there's many ways to address exactly the same thing, but we often, I'm just looking to see who else is coming on with me here. We often have concepts about what that is to empower the self, because we all seek to empower ourselves, but a lot of the way that we think about it is outwardly. We look outwardly. We tend to look towards this teacher. He or she has all my answers. We tend to look towards this book, this video, this recording, this audio, whatever that is. We tend to look outside because our world is based on these inputs. You have your 5 sense perceptions, but your eyes are waiting for something to come. Your eyes are waiting for light to illuminate the back of your eye that makes an electrical signal through the optic nerve, and then to the ocular center of the brain, and onwards. Your ears are waiting for something to come, for something to vibrate the eardrum, then the hammer, stirrup, anvil, then the cochlea, then the cilia in the cochlea, which changes it into, again, electrical signals in the brain. Your nose waiting for a scent, tongue for smell, hands for touch. Okay, so we tend to think in terms outwardly of what it takes for us to empower ourselves. We have to go outside, but it's actually the other way around. If you really embrace that we live in a oneness, then technically there's no place to go. There's nothing to find because you're already there. And there's humor. All my life I've tried to scale invisible, immovable walls until I finally realized there was no wall. I was already there. And sometimes, when you go to the guru and they give you some kind of impossible task, it's because they know that you think you need to master some kind of challenge before you finally acquiesce to the truth of your being. And so the other side of the coin is when the devotee went to the Yogananda and he says, Swamiji, isn't it true that we can be enlightened just by meditating only? Should we only meditate? And Swamiji says, well, no. He says, you need your body so you can do what God sent you here to do. So we have this physical nature, but in order to self-empower, we often think in terms of what we have to go get. When I have this book, when I have this magic lasso, when I have this incense, this teacher, all that ever does is continue to point you back to yourself. All a teacher ever does is continue to point you back to you, because that is where the power really is. It's always within you. See? Caesar, do you have something you want to add? No, just you're scratching your head for ideas? Is that it? Okay, well, maybe he'll say something later. He loves to sing, though, by the way, and he loves to talk. So, yeah, he's very loving. He loves to wrestle and all of that. If you've had a pet for almost 31 years, you get very used to each other, and we are. He's very loving. So to self-empower would be to reveal more of the truth of who you really are, more of the actual beauty of yourself. And how many of us, in a loving way, not teasing now, walk around this earth thinking how beautiful you are? No, I'm not teasing. I mean, how many of us walk around thinking how lovely it is for you to be you? How lucky you are that you have eyes that see and ears that hear, that you have a body, that you have a brain, that, I think a large part of self-realization or self-empowerment is also rooted in a form of gratitude that you are where you are. It's not uncommon for great teachers like Yogananda and others to come on and say, well, bless your challenges as much as you are blessing the optimal things that happen in your life. I mean, this is really something that we have to embrace, but that's still hard for me because I think, oh, if I have some challenge that was hurtful to me, or someone insulted me, or some tragedy, let's say, in my life, and then I would have to say, oh, well, that's such a blessing. But this is what many of the teachers say, including one of my dearest teachers, Dr. Hiroshi Motoyama, who was the founder and president of the California Institute for Human Science. I know you hear me say that often because I work there as lead faculty, and I'm also the chair of the board of directors for this very fine graduate school and research center into the mind-body-spirit relationship. So Motoyama himself, too, in some of his books, one book called Karma and Reincarnation, he talked about this. And he said that, when you have a great challenge, consider it some form of a blessing. But, there was a time in 2010 that I had broken my foot and my leg. So I was in an air cast. And within 10 days, I was down in the Yucatan, Mexico, doing a presentation at a Crystal Skulls conference, then going to Chichen Itza. Then 4 days after that, flying to Japan because I was a featured speaker in a conference in Osaka. And here I am traveling around in an air cast, and I'm thinking, okay, this is such a blessing. So sometimes it's not easy to look for self-empowerment in terms of the challenges that you have and saying, well, embedded within those challenges is an amazing blessing for me. So self-empowerment is a way of revealing the truth of your nature. Sogyal Rinpoche, really cool Tibetan scholar, great sense of humor. He talks about how in the clear sky, there are no clouds. In the clear sky, there are no clouds. And so, in a way, the clouds are like your thoughts. You know, with your thoughts, you think, but at the same time, you're not your thoughts. They go by like clouds because every thought you have is kind of moving. Just like when you have a fear, the fear will come, but actually, it's moving. Like when a fear comes for you, move into the feeling, not the thought, and you'll find that the thought will evaporate much more quickly. And so when we are looking to externalize what we already have, you have to go within first. You have to go within prayer, meditation, contemplative practices, spiritual practices, and other types of exercises where you are strengthening and accessing the perfection within you that you already have. And sometimes the road is very strenuous. There's a lot of rigor involved where, yes, you do have to work. You know, what happens to me personally is my guides will wake me up and I'll look at my little Fitbit and it'll say 3:58, 3:25, 3:20 in the morning. Okay, time to get up and meditate. Have you gotten up at 3:20 in the morning and meditated? And sometimes it's difficult to answer when Spirit would have you utilize the time best for your prayers, for your meditations, but to bring forth what we call the inner Christ, the inner knower, the inner Buddha, the master within. And you hear the advent of more and more of these teachings taking place, whether they're offered on the web or you see them on Facebook or in print media or on TV. You know, there's lots of teachers that are offering you ways to evolve the self, to develop the self, to awaken the master within, many forms of self-importance, self-evaluation so that you can continue this inner awakening. The thing about awakening is because we tend to think only in three-dimensional terms, we think about awakening much like we think about sleep. I'm asleep, I'm awake. I'm sleeping, I'm awake. It's like one or the other. But awakening is actually a process because there's no death. There's no death. We close our eyes for the body to die, but the spirit lives on. And so think of it instead in the way the Japanese use a philosophy for all martial arts. You know, in Japan, there's Aikido, Kendo, Judo, but there's one word that applies to all Japanese martial arts. It's called Budo. It means relentless training that never ends. So think about awakening and self-empowerment as an ongoing process. It's something that you just do all the time. Mindfulness, staying entirely composed in the moment, allowing yourself to not be distracted, either electronically, mentally, emotionally, and so forth. Being very grounded, being focused. Those are part of the process by which one self-empowers, or Yogananda's favorite term was self-realization. Self-realization. So as we continue to do our work in self-empowerment on an ongoing basis, then we give up worry that we're have someplace to get to. Because if we think of it where I'm going to be enlightened, boom, that it happens like that, we're still thinking in linear terms, in terms of time. In the higher dimensions, there is no time, there is no space. Our souls are immortal, the bodies are mortal. So this is kind of a conundrum for a person who is just starting to seek and really wanting to know, you know, how does the spiritual path work? Well, it works by iteration, by process, by steps. But every step is sacred, because if you realize you really live in the oneness, then what step do you have to get to that finally dissolves all of the illusion? That's our work. So every step can become fully and completely a sacred container for you to express complete and total gratitude for the process that you are currently in. Because if you do live in a oneness, then are you not as close to God as Einstein, the Dalai Lama, Gandhi, Mother Teresa? Pick someone. We're all in the same boat energetically. Everything really is frequency, energy, and vibration. This is what Einstein and Tesla were talking about. So as we embark upon self-empowerment by prayer, meditation, and using spiritual tools, we really do change the very way our mind works, the very way your mind thinks. As I said earlier, Paramahansa was talking about how as you meditate, you awaken your intuition. My own students, when they are in the process of learning integrative chakra therapy, the very way in which they're taught to use their healing skills to facilitate healing helps to stimulate their own chakras to awaken, and thus awaken even more the intuition that they already have. So within you is already perfection, but you can reveal it through your work. Within you is already intuition, but you can strengthen it by using faith. Faith is the power of the devotion of the will towards the muscle of the intuition to increase its abilities and its depth. And you can be so sufficiently developed intuitively that your life becomes much, much more of a flow than it does a series of steps. You just have a kind of a continuity to you. So I wrote a few things down. Deirdre and I, we've done this radio program. This is the 5th year for Light News Radio. And we are notorious for going off script, especially if we invite a guest on for as an interview, which we've done many, many times. But at the same time, it really helps me to make sure that I'm mentioning all the things that I really wanted to talk about. So when I first started talking to you, one of the things I was saying was about how many changes have been occurring in the past 50, 60 years. And that, technologically, we really have advanced, way beyond a lot of people's abilities to comprehend just how much we have changed technologically. And so does self-empowerment have anything to do with the era in which we live right now? And the answer is yes, very much. But it isn't just because of technology. It's not about technology. It's about evolution. It's about consciousness. It's about the era called the golden era of inner transformation, which is this 2012 era, where starting in 1992, I really started to study the Mayan culture because they have one of the only calendrical systems that we know of that talks about when a certain consciousness should show up. So it's not just that we're living in an era on Earth where we are technologically sophisticated. It is the level of consciousness upon which we have engaged. So to the Mayans, we're living in the era of inner transformation. But if you lived in India, you'd be following the yugas, Y-U-G-A-S, yugas, which is a 26,000 year cycle of time according to Earth's precession of the equinox, where in this era called Dwapara Yuga, we are supposed to know the subtle forces of the universe. This is why 400 years ago, we discovered electricity, magnetism, and gravity. So if you were an astrologer, you would say, well, now we're living in the time of Aquarius, Aquarius, sometimes said different ways, which is the age beyond the Piscean into the age of a higher level of what I like to call truth revealed. If you were Greek, you'd say we're going from the Iron to the Bronze Age, another way of looking at this cycle of consciousness. So more than anything else, the cycle of consciousness is driving the technologies of our day, whether it's electromagnetic field technology or machining technology or medical technology or material science technology. How about the technology of energy medicine, like what I teach, integrative chakra therapy? How about the technology of energy psychology, EFT, NLP, HLBU, and there's so many other acronyms out there describing how competent psychologists are using energy work to get at root issues or root illusions. And so in this way, we're living in an era of consciousness where self-empowerment has been self-created. We are the ones who have created all of the healers to exist to facilitate our healing in what I have called the co-creative conscious collaboration. That means that each one of us is a spirit with a physical nature, both, two sides of the same coin, and that we have created the means to emancipate ourselves from the illusion of separation. So self-empowerment is bringing forth the inner knower, but it's also evaporating the idea that there's any separation. The separation is based on the illusion that I'm separate from everything else when I'm not. The illusion is what creates the suffering because we think we have to go get something when it's already there. But there's times when you do have to go get something. Maybe you have to exchange your physical labor for money, and then you go to the store and you exchange your physical money for food, right? And then you eat your food and you exchange your physical food for energy to propel your body, right? And so forth. So this idea of the technology really is esoterically consciously based. And yet there are very many other types of changes that are happening. You know, there are environmental changes, climate changes, changes in the electromagnetic field, seismic changes. Just heard of an earthquake 2 days ago between Madagascar and Africa that created these ultra low frequency waves, but nobody knows and can explain them, and yet it made the entire earth ring like a bell for some time, and they picked the seismic waves up 11,000 miles away from this place. And then today there was an earthquake, I believe 8 miles away from Anchorage, that was super deep in the earth, but it was twice as powerful as the 1994 earthquake in Alaska. And the reason it wasn't so devastating is because it was much deeper, but twice as powerful. So yes, there's a lot of earth changes. But remember, when you're talking to someone like me, I'm looking at things from a spiritual perspective. So I would tell you that the earth is a living being. I wouldn't tell you that it's a rock with water on it and plants and animals. I would be more inclined to say that earth is Gaia, Eridu, Tiamat, that it has been existed by many names, but it is actually a living being upon which we, the people, and the animals, and the flowers, and the plants, and the minerals, upon which we have this ability to grow as we're nurtured by the sun. So yes, we're living in an age where there are many types of changes, but the changes are also causing us to focus. You know, we have a president now in our country who has incited, you know, a lot of change because of the way that he has conducted himself. It has caused a lot of reaction in our society to change. There's a vast number of women now in the United States who are running for office, who are running for government positions, who never would have done that before. But this is also a form of self-empowerment. It's a form of taking your power back. It's a form of really desiring to see things as they are instead of as they appear to be. Okay, so just a moment for shameless self-promotion. You're watching Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment, and you can reach us on our website, www.lightnews.org, www.lightnews.org. And if you want to email us, it's info@lightnews.org. If you love the phone, then call us 877-242-5721, 877-242-5721. And what does that mean? 877 chakra 1, if you ever look. Yeah, so Rayanne says, yes, the earthquake also in Africa as well. Yeah, and Karina is on with us too. And she is a delightful graduate from some time ago in integrative chakra therapy, which I will get to because before the show ends, I want to talk about some calendrical stuff that we got going on too. Okay, so what is the benefit? What is the benefit? I want to tell you a short story. There was a rich man that went over to the poor man's house, and the poor man said, "Have some bread with me." And so the rich man did. Of course, the bread was hard, dry, and tacky. And the rich man said, "Well, you fed me, now I'll feed you." So the poor man goes over to the rich man's house. And of course, he tastes the rich man's bread, and it's rich, doughy, and savory, moist, you know. And so the story is once you taste the richness of the truth of your own spiritual self, you won't prefer anything else. And so this is why in metaphysics, in spirituality, we always say the only way to really know God is with a direct inner revelatory experience. And that's what separates the idea of spirituality from religion. A typical religion would be adopting a set of codified beliefs as your own, whereas the spirituality would be going into those beliefs and going further and further into the depths of your own being to observe what's true for you and what's not true. So that's the difference. And so certainly there are many religions where people have woken up to the truth of their spiritual nature, and the religion served its purpose by imbuing them with a sense of love of the Creator, a sense of love and compassion and harmlessness for each other, certainly. But to use the word spiritual is to mean an intimate inner journey. And so in terms of self-empowerment, the benefit is you start to see things as they are. It's one of the things about the intuition too that you can glean from your meditations, from doing exercises that improve the intuition, is that the higher sense perceptions, they don't work in the same way as the five senses. So when we start to really start trusting our intuition and our higher faculties, it can be a little awkward. It can be a little confusing for us. And yet, the more you embrace and exercise your intuition, the more you start to see things as they are, not as they appear to be. So this can cause quite a shift in your life when you come to what's called realization. So what is realization? So let's look at it on a graph, okay? We'll make our little graph in the air here, okay? So let's say right here is data. And data, when you look at it, can become information. You study it, you read it, you see it, you assimilate it. And that information can then become knowledge when you start putting it together. Like, oh, this information starts to mean something. So data becomes information, becomes knowledge. Now, knowledge can become wisdom over time as you apply your knowledge with a higher sense of reason, passion, pragmatism, and practicality, right? But the wisdom can then become realization only with awareness. So you can have wisdom, but you can become realized with higher states of awareness. Awareness means beyond time and space. This is where the rubber really hits the road for a person who desires a more spiritually centered life, in that as you awaken your higher faculties and you see things as they are, your awareness grows by exponentially, shall we say, by leaps and bounds. And as you continue in this way, you come to states of realization where you let go of the illusions that have caused you suffering. That's why you can see very advanced men and women who have come to realizations. They always seem to be happy and nothing seems to perturb them. And it's not because they train their mind to turn off. They've trained their mind to see things as they are from a higher perspective. So as you continue to awaken spiritually, you see more and more levels of unification on higher and higher and higher and higher and higher levels of being. It's what my teacher called being as topos, T-O-P-O-S, topos as in topography. You start seeing the surface contours from higher and higher and higher perspectives. So I encourage you to improve the nature of your encourage you to improve the nature of your seeking, to look for the synchronicities, the little nuances that are pointing you towards greater levels of self-empowerment. So what do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. Synchronicity is a type of a flow where nothing happens by accident. There are no coincidences. There is no happenstance. That there's always a kind of a deliberate unfolding of this universe for our benefit, if we're watching. And so we have to watch very closely, because sometimes the cues are very much a nuance. They're very light and wispy. So I was in a very poor mood about 2 weeks ago, and my wife and I decided to walk through a nature preserve. And as we're walking past our driveway, I looked down and I saw a feather there. And it's the first time I've ever seen a feather on our property. And I thought, okay, take things lightly. I get it. Because I was looking for, does that have a synchronicity for me? Because my work is the same as yours, self-empowerment, self-realization. Okay, take things lightly. Don't take it so serious. So then we go on our walk, and I come back, and right near on the driveway where the feather was a cricket in broad daylight. Cricket. And I thought, okay, keep things light. And I'm thinking Jiminy Cricket also, and Disney and lightness and beauty. So, I was taking advantage of my own self-empowerment to say, I have a choice in how I choose to react to the exigencies, the little emergencies of life. That's up to me, how I choose to look at things. So one of the tools I can use for self-empowerment is synchronicity. I look for those little cues, those little things that just pop up and say, oh, it's like you're driving along, and you're thinking, oh, I'm not really in a good mood and I'm just wasting my time. And then you see a flashing billboard that says, tired? Pull over and rest here. And you think, oh, is that a coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence. There's no such thing. Or you could be watching your television or looking at something on your computer, and an ad pops up for something, or you get an email from somebody that's very timely. So these are forms of synchronicity. There's a wonderful book by David Wilcock, Wilcock, and it's called The Synchronicity Key. And as I'm just now winding up a course that I'm teaching at CIHS called Past Lives, Karma, and the Survival of Consciousness, that was one of their assignments, was to read about synchronicity in this book. It's quite lovely. I think you'd really enjoy it. I think it's also accessible through other formats as well. So another tool is meditation. And meditation has many roads. It's like one destination, but there's many paths you can get there. You can meditate through yoga. You can meditate through prayer. You can meditate through silence. You can meditate through singing and chanting and mantras. So dangle your feet in different spiritual waters. Look for ways that you can meditate that work for you. Some people cannot sit still and meditate like this, but some people are walking meditators. Like, I think, my amazing assistant, Deirdre, I think one of her meditations is her frequent trips to the mountains. She goes out to Bragg Creek or further to many places, and she and Rod, her wonderful husband, they know these places so clearly, and that's one of her recharges, is to go out and walk in nature, and that is a form of meditation for her. So meditation can be anything. It can be anywhere. You could be standing in line in the grocery department of the store and still be in a form of meditative state. So that's another form of self-empowerment. Remember, it's in the moment. It's not so much a destination as it is a process. And as you apply yourself in mindfulness, another way is mindfulness, synchronicity, meditation, mindfulness. Mindfulness is being fully present, fully concentrated in the moment, right here, right now, nowhere else, but right here in this moment. Because after all, that's where your power is. 4, choice. You always have a choice. We always have people in our lives that affect us differently. Some we just love to be with, and others sometimes, in truth, we tolerate. But you still have a choice as to how to respond in a given situation, and that also defines your karma, which is another subject. But all 4 of those are ways that you can achieve a greater form of self-empowerment. Number 5, prayer. Prayer works. And I tell you that as an opinion because you have your opinions, I have mine, I have the years I've spent doing my work, and I can tell you that prayer works every time. In my own form of humor, I say, you know, God has really good hearing. So I'm just looking on the computer to see if anyone else has come on. We've had a really good response today. You know, if you got any questions, go ahead and type them in. Ask me. So I think that could be enough of that. I just wanted to mention a little bit about some of the courses that we've got coming up online. One of them is called the Tarot. You know what the Tarot is? A deck of 78 cards, 56 minor arcana and 22 major arcana. I've been teaching the Tarot for many, many years. I'm just looking to see if there's messages on the computer. And I have a 100% success rate teaching the Tarot. Now we've got it coming out as an online course. So stay tuned. Of course, our website is www.lightnews.org. So Tarot is an online course taught by me, will become available. And I'm working on a course right now called Awakening the Master Within. I'm very excited about this because I will be teaching it to you on Zoom, which is a platform like Skype, only I think it's better. And these will be 6 online courses, Awakening the Master Within, plus a workbook for each module, each of the 6 online modules, and then a 3-day retreat. And that's going to start sometime in January. So we're just working on putting all the pieces together, but it'll be the latter part of January. So if you're interested, please stay tuned. If you're not on our email list and you would like to be, please do let us know. Okay. And I wanted to answer a question because I'm very glad Rayanne, who's a marvelous graduate of ICT, Integrative Chakra Therapy, and she's doing some teaching of her own up in the Camrose area north of Calgary. So, you know, please do check that out. She asked a question and she said, why do you feel people are drawn to specific work like ICT initially, Integrative Chakra Therapy? Because the way that our karma works is we are placed in situations specific to precisely what we need to learn in a given lifetime. Maybe you're born as Chinese person because you need to have a view of the philosophy of life as the Chinese culture has. Or maybe you are born as a male or as a female. You go through the 5 races of people. You go through different cultures. So the same thing is true when you wish to do some form of energy medicine or energy psychology. Different forms are available. As you know, there's a million types of healing work that's out there, from Reiki to craniosacral to healing touch to what's another one? I forget, Bev knows this well, bionic autonomy, or bionic anatomy or something like that. I'm so sorry, Deb, I just killed that. I'm sorry. But the reason we're drawn to it is because it's our co-creation. That's the bottom line. The reason that we're drawn to specific teachings is because it's part of our co-creation. And sometimes we think, oh, I'm so lucky to have come across this teacher. Well, actually, it's because this teacher and your paths needed to cross so that your stories would merge. And that's why that happens. So initially, you're drawn to specific types of work because it's most suited for the evolution of your soul quality. It's pretty cool. So the one more time, the Awakening the Master Within is an online course for 6 weeks consecutively, plus there will be a workbook, plus we have a 3-day retreat after that, and I'll have much more information. The reason I'm laughing, I have much more information coming. My dear brother, Eric Lynn, you really need to meet him. You fall in love with him instantly. He's just a beautiful soul. He's an amazing tattoo artist. He's done all 3 tattoos that I have, and I'm so happy to have them. Not always happy to receive them, but happy to have them. And he lives in Sedona, so I think he's one of the only tattoo artists there, and just incredible talent. But also he has an incredible view of life. He's a graduate of my ICT program, and just an amazing person. So he writes me a question because it's a little cheeky. He says, do dwarves have smaller souls? Do dwarves have smaller souls? Just the kind of question I thought you would ask me, Eric. So does that mean that a whale has a bigger soul? So if the soul quality is beyond time and space, there's no size. So no. That'd be like saying, does an insect have a smaller soul than a person? And yet, according to many teachings, we all start out as just about everything from a blade of grass to an insect to a reptile to a mammal to human. And beyond that, there's a book that I have years and years ago. I think it's called Solar Angel, and it says there's 9 paths that you can have after being a human being. 2 of them are becoming a planet or becoming a star. So imagine if there was a size, then what type of size soul would a star have? In the higher dimension, there's no time or space. So, Eric, size doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter. Okay, so in the time remaining, anybody wants a reading, just let me know. Good to see me smile. Well, I miss you, brother. We got to come see you in Sedona, right? That Red Rock area. I've taken people to Sedona on spiritual journeys in the last couple of years, and those turned out really well to go pray and meditate at the vortexes. Yeah, that's really something. So if there are no requests for readings, I want to go on to mention a little bit of the calendrical stuff just so that we have it. Again, our website is www.lightnews.org, lightnews.org. Tonight, I'm doing an astral travel workshop in healing therapies in La Mesa, astral travel workshop. Tomorrow, December 1st, I know December already, right? Tomorrow I'm doing an all-day workshop on mediumship where I will teach you what mediumship is, how to do it in a safe way, where you will actually be doing some mediumship. You know, usually I don't teach it until students are at an advanced level, but I've been meditating and I will teach a limited number of people to do some mediumship on a very sacred container in a very safe manner. That's tomorrow at Healing Therapies in La Mesa, San Diego, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And all that information is on our website, and that is www.lightnews.org. December 4th in Vista, California, which is northern San Diego. We have Past Lives, Karma, and Reincarnation. And then in Calgary, I'll be in Calgary this December 6th through 11th. December 7th, flower readings in Calgary. December 8th in the evening, astral travel workshop. December 8th and 9th, that's Saturday and Sunday. You come in the afternoon between 2 and 4 for free energy balancing. All this is on the website. December 9th, more flower readings in Calgary. So please do come. So it looks like my dear brother Eric has asked me for a reading, and so has Lynn Schaefer. And then Rayanne has sent me a photo. So very quickly, I want to tell Eric that to be blunt, my brother, your heart is very open right now. And the thing about an open heart is it's easy for people who are a little cavalier to enter. And so there's nothing wrong with having an open heart, but there's nothing wrong with carrying a big stick. And what I mean by that is there's nothing wrong with having really healthy boundaries as to who you let in and how much you let in. So right now your heart's very open, but please, if you would just kind of be aware of your surroundings and where you're going with that very open heart, okay? Because it's like breath. We breath in and we breath out, and we breath in and we breath out. So, you know, have really good boundaries, my brother. And then that way you won't feel that little bit of tightness in your chest that I feel you have. Lynn Schaefer says, yes, please. Boy, are you in trouble for saying yes, please to me. So Lynn, this chakra right here is called the throat chakra. And in Sanskrit, it's called Vishuddhi, with a V like Victor, Vishuddhi. And Vishuddhi means to purify. So right now your throat chakra is deficient, and deficient means you could be struggling to comprehend something of great import. And so like in the Bible, when it says be still and know, this is your opportunity to really get quiet and listen and comprehend. And one of the greatest teachers in the throat chakra is the intuition. So this is not the time to think your way through something. This is the time to sit down, ground, get totally in the body, totally mindful, and then use your intuition to bring yourself through this feeling of not being able to figure something out. So it's not about figuring it out, it's about feeling it out right now. It's not about figuring it out, it's about feeling it out. The other side of the coin is you're not always going to be able to describe to someone else. So be equanimous, have equanimity. You know, just if you want to describe something to someone right now, that's fine. But watch their mind and see if they're really understanding, because you don't want to waste your time either, right? So just be really cool with that. Don't waste your energy. Okay, so let's look here. Oh, here is, this looks like, oh yeah, Rayanne sent me a flower. I can't really show it to you right now, but that flower indicates also a lot of throat chakra activity and third chakra. So throat is Vishuddhi, third chakra, solar plexus, and the solar plexus. Hi, Christopher. Yeah, hello. The solar plexus has a lot to do with the I am, who am I, my power, my sense of self, my sense of well-being. But the throat chakra is also about telepathy, which is accessing higher levels of meaning and comprehension, just like I was telling Lynn. So this is a time to meter yourself. It's kind of like, you know, a horse kicking in the stall saying, I just want to gallop and I just want to go, which is good. And maybe instead of bursting out of the stall, wait for the door to open. And I mean that respectfully. Wait for the door of the stall to open and then step out instead of bursting out, and be more metered and more measured in your steps. You know, like the Mayan jaguar is called Balaam, Balaam, and the jaguar is the power animal of the Mayan, but also the esoteric animal that does the hidden teachings. So as the power animal, every step of the jaguar is very deliberate. So yes, you have a lot of power, and yes, you're bursting, but one step at a time. Okay? So we're getting very close to the end of our program. And I do have a thing called Dr. J's Cosmic Circle. It's something that we've started that we're just getting going here, and it gives you access to parts of the website, to my writings and meditations, and there's a cost to join, but you get money off on future events. So we're still developing this, and if you'd like to have more information, just go to our website, lightnews.org, or give us an email at info@lightnews.org, and we'll explain the details. But the idea is, if you buy in, then you know you get both of my books, you get the CD, you get 5 meditations, you get many dollars worth of incentives in order to get the Cosmic Circle going. And of course, the reason that we're doing this is because I really want to be able to reach more people around the planet, to be able to help them to empower themselves, because the idea I have in my heart is to help Light News to reach people where they live, and to help them to really truly get into much more self-empowerment, much more engaged in the process. So Jason Lee says, hello, Richard, a reading for me, please. Okay, yes, and no. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. I warned you, my humor can be very painful. So Jason, I'm gonna just give you the last reading before I sign off, because you asked. The second chakra is the one below the navel. It's called Svadhisthana, which means the home of the original self. And your second chakra right now is very erratic. And that's a good word, because erratic means neither dormant nor fully stimulated. So that means whatever you're doing right now, you're doing right. I mean, you may not agree with me, and that's fine, but whatever you're doing to stimulate that second chakra to be erratic is giving you the space for tremendous growth. So you might feel right now that something's been taken away from you, but actually it's been taken off your plate, so you no longer have to concentrate on it, and you can concentrate on other things. So think of this positively, that if something is removed from your life, now you have time to create. So instead of freaking out, you say, okay, what is my intuition telling me? Because the second chakra is the one that creates, and it creates something from nothing. So a large amount of faith is required right now to really be in that place of inner trust. And then in that way, what you create will come forth. It just won't always be what you expect, but to be in mindfulness of your faith, you know, is really where it's at right now. It really is where it's at. Okay, so I'm getting close to the place where I need to sign off, and I want to thank everybody for listening. please do like, share, follow, do all those little Facebook tricks that help this video to get out to the public so they can use this information to empower themselves to stand on their own 2 feet as emancipated light beings and visionaries, because we want everybody to wake up, be self-empowered, and not fall to all of the delusions and the limitations and the illusions that are so prevalent today. There's a lot of distractions, and the last thing we need is more distractions. We need to stay focused and standing in the power of the light. So thank you for listening to Light News Radio. I love you all very much, even you, Eric. I'm your host, Dr. J, and my temporary co-host today is Caesar. Say hello. That's my boy. Say hello. You can see them. Yeah. And you can check out our website, lightnews.org, as you've heard 300 times during this broadcast. And of course, may the principles of harmlessness and compassion be the ever constant, ever present guide of your every intention, of your every thought, of your every action. And so it is, and so it shall be. It is done. Bless you on your journey home, and thank you, everybody, for watching.